Okay, welcome to the WAN Manager Podcast. I'm your host, Bryan, and today we have with us Jason Gintert from WAN Dynamics, and he's going to share with us some insights on the real hot topic of integrating security into the WAN. For me, hopefully sort out some of the hype and buzzwords from what it all really means. And hopefully help everybody understand better what they need to be thinking about in this space. So welcome, Jason.
Thanks, Greg. Good to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we jump into the topic at hand, I wonder if you could just tell us kind of a little bit about your background and what you do at WAN Dynamics.
Sure thing. Happy to. So, I've been in the WAN space for a long time. Worked for a few regional service providers for the past 20 years or so. Started WAN Dynamics back in 2016 when this SD-WAN thing started to take off. I was working on product development inside of a service provider and was working on SD-WAN products and was like, wow, this is pretty cool. I wonder if we can just go out and do it on our own with an over-the-top telco independent option. So that's what we started doing. Made our ways into the security space, do a lot more with professional and managed network services these days, not just focus on the WAN. We do many other things too with the LAN and security. But yeah, it's been a fun run and lots of exciting challenges along the way.
Excellent. Were you at Cincinnati Bell? I know you're in Ohio.
I was not. They are infamous around here for sure. And
I know it's just that
them. For sure.
Like the last vestige of the old, Baby Bell system from way back, right?
For sure. And they own their territory, let me tell you. If you needed stuff done in Cincinnati, they're like the telco mafia down there.
We're the telephone company.
Yeah, right. I worked for a company called Fidelity Voice and Data for a long time, for about 13 years. And,
Gotcha.
When I started there, it was dedicated T1s. That was what we were slinging. And then, when I left, we were doing big Ethernet pipes with colo and integrated SIP trunking. So I've definitely seen quite an evolution over the years. It was a big change from when I started there to when I left. And, even more so just in the last, almost 5 years now that we've been doing WAN Dynamics, things will change quite a bit. Cloud is just, a significant impact on connectivity and how things, are coming together.
Yeah, for sure. We started the WAN Summit in 2013. And so when I think back on that 7 years, absolutely whole thing has changed since our first few events where we were talking about, seeing if you could get Ethernet to connect to your MPLS ports and whatnot. It's just a totally different world. So it's been interesting to watch.
Totally agree.
Yeah. So, our topic for today was security, and that's specifically why I wanted you on, especially to bring some of the kind of end user perspective as someone sort of working with end users rather than from, we're going to hear from SD-WAN vendors, security vendors, that kind of thing. So looking at it from that seat of being the WAN manager, one of the things we've seen in our surveys, folks that I've talked to at various events over the last few years, has been that their real issue was getting the WAN team in concert with the security team and make sure that infrastructure and security were coordinated. And that's still a challenge even now with some of the folks that we talk to. So I just wanted, from your perspective, kind of what do you think has driven this change, that before they were really, sort of functionally separate teams, but now you absolutely have to have those two teams integrated? What's behind that change?
Well, I think that we were talking about MPLS and private networks, and those really being the way that a WAN manager, achieved connectivity across the business. How that's changing is, SD-WAN's really shaken that up, and that you can use, any type of connectivity to produce a business class WAN. And when you were in that private network world, it was really easy to drag that traffic back to like a data center or headquarters, a central location where the security team could, do whatever they needed to do to visualize and manipulate traffic from a security perspective. And what's changed is things like local breakout to say,
Right.
this type of traffic, just send this directly to where it needs to go over the internet. So potentially the security team doesn't have visibility into that. So I think,
Hmm.
when SD-WAN started to emerge, you and I both know that a lot of WAN managers were just like, oh, cool, this is a great way to run my WAN. I want to do this now, without really engaging the security team. And then the security guys
Right.
started to realize, like, wait a minute, you're doing what with our traffic? You're sending it direct?
Right. Yeah.
I need to see what's going
Yeah.
on there. And then so the security team started to come back and say, okay, with this new SD-WAN profile, there's new things to consider. And we can't do it the way
Hmm.
we used to, which is backhaul it all to the data center, central location,
Right.
see the traffic there. Now we have to have multiple points where we're able to, intercept that traffic and see what's going on.
Or even pre SD-WAN, right? So I mean, as long as you have adopted some local breakouts in the network where folks are getting directly to their cloud services, whatever that may be, it's still necessary. Then, even if you're not counting that, even if you don't have SD-WAN installed, and then that's not necessarily part of the WAN yet, is that still an issue, right? So
Yeah, absolutely. What do they call it? Hybrid WAN, kind of before SD-WAN was
right,
hybrid WAN, and how to deal with that.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, same
Mhm.
deal. Like the security guys who are, but having to get a handle on that. And I think what's different and what's changed is in some of these newer modern platforms is things like service chaining capabilities. So the ability to,
Right,
take, security services, stitch them in the middle somewhere along the way, open APIs that allow the WAN and security team to exchange information between the tools that they use openly.
right.
That's
Hmm.
that's another big factor is the rise of APIs in a lot of these tools.
Hmm. So you think your customers have been adopting well in this sense?
I think so. Definitely. The cool thing is that it almost seems like the WAN and the security stack are merging in some ways. And
Hmm.
there's,
Hmm.
and like I mentioned, there's more open integrations to a lot of those platforms now, where you can tie the security elements you need in multiple places. So, for example, there's vendors like Palo Alto and Fortinet out there, security vendors that have multiple points in the stack. So,
Right.
you need that site visibility. If you're doing local breakout, you've got to have some sort of element that can intercept and visualize the traffic that's before it hits the internet. Also, the private traffic that comes across the WAN, but there's also central points of enforcement for stuff like web traffic, and like Palo would have like a Prisma for all of that say CASB or
Hmm.
which is Cloud Access Security Broker, an element in between to back all that traffic to before you send it off to a cloud service. And also, being able to have some sort of element on site that also does traffic inspection to see what's happening there. So I think the tools are getting more mature, more distributed, but yet having central points of management to see all these things in one pane. So I
Right.
think that
Right.
as they
Yeah.
develop, and like I said, those open APIs that make those enable those capabilities, they're getting more mature, and I'm seeing a lot more. In the past 5 years, I definitely am seeing a certain level of maturity with security and WAN teams, and more ease in working with one another as they're getting used to it.
Yeah, that's encouraging, but I guess it's when one team makes a decision that greatly affects the other, you have to learn to work together really quickly, right? So,
Yes,
yeah.
definitely true.
So everything we've been saying here were all trends that were well underway over the past few years. Whether it's having alternative transport due to SD-WAN adoption, or just sort of hybrid local internet breakouts before that, but all of this really came to a head in March when all of a sudden everybody headed home. What do you think has been the impact there with flinging all of these workers who are at maybe a branch office off onto sort of private broadband connections, and has that accelerated these changes? Did it cause some challenges even for those who had already adopted these kinds of postures?
I will tell you about it from our perspective, of the experiences we
Hmm.
had as managed and professional services providers for our clients. We spent April and May buried, completely
No,
just
yeah, I bet.
working maintenance
Yeah.
window after maintenance window after maintenance window, helping customers
Hmm.
adapt their infrastructure because a lot of them, they dip their toe in, they kind of thought about it. They're like, yeah, we're going to get there someday. And then this happened, and they all called and said, we got to get there now. And
Right.
it was
Right.
a lot of accommodating, VPNs, and those cloud security services were a godsend for a lot of these customers that just didn't have the
Hmm.
bandwidth in their data center, or didn't
Hmm.
have the requirements. Maybe the hardware, couldn't hold up if they had, physical firewalls in the data center. It just wouldn't be able to physically handle the load of that many users.
Right,
So
right. All of
many
the
of them.
different sign-ins that it was just used to say, whatever 200 sites, all of a sudden that becomes, 12,000 or something like that, right?
Exactly. So
Yeah,
instead of
yeah.
like, the 50 or 100 users that might be connected at any given time because they're, on the
Mhm.
road or working from home, suddenly becomes,
Right,
like you said, 1,200 users all working from home simultaneously all day.
right.
Just to be able to turn up that infrastructure in a cloud-based manner was a saving grace for a number of our customers. But I think it really has broken up open the model of working from home and really validated the whole SASE, the Secure Access Service Edge model. Because
Mhm.
before we're talking about hybrid WAN and SD-WAN, how that changed the wide area network if you're in a static location. But even further widening and open is remote access users, that are working from home. And I really don't think, even after this is over, that everyone's going back. There's a lot of, organizations that have
Yeah.
said, we're now giving you the option. You can stay remote if that's what you'd prefer to do, as long as the work gets done. We really don't mind. So I think that for some, this may be a permanent change. Some people may go back, but there's a lot of people who aren't going to. So I think that it's
100%.
here to stay. I think SASE's here to stay, and I think we all kind of chuckle every time we
I was
say
gonna say
that.
we need to find a better words. It just brings to mind the sort of Riot Girl magazine from my youth in the '90s, right? So
I was gonna say I remember Sassy. Yeah, yeah.
I
Um,
think Guy from Fugazi was Sassy's Man of the Year one year. That was like the highlight of it. So,
and one year wasn't it
yeah.
the guy from Shudder to Think too? I remember somebody.
Yes, absolutely.
I was
Yeah.
listening to Shudder
Yeah.
to Think, and I had a friend who read Sassy magazine. She's like, "Oh, Shudder to Think. He's, Craig's totally in this this issue." Um, Anyhow, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I really wish they'd come up with a better acronym for it. But we've been actually WAN Dynamics, unbeknownst to us, has been implementing SASE for the past 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, that's the key.
So
It's I mean ZTS or software defined perimeter are concepts that have been around for a while, and it's not radically sort of different to say that is at the edge. That was kind of the point all along, as I understood it, right? So, but it's what everybody is saying, and
absolutely.
that's that, right? So, yeah. Okay, Jason. So when we're talking about hybrid networks, local internet breakouts, usually we're talking in these conversations about DIA and broadband. I think all of the WAN manager sort of IT infrastructure folks that I normally talk to are well familiar with the differences in performance and SLA and whatnot that you might get between those two technologies. But is there anything to think about security wise, or is it from the security standpoint, a pipe is a
From a
pipe? It doesn't really
security
matter.
perspective, SD-WAN and a lot of the technologies therein kind of see the pipes as similar in that it's still going to build what's called an overlay over whether it's private, whether it's public. It's still going to build its own tunneling and either dynamically encrypt or encrypt all the time the traffic that runs over those overlays. So in that regard, it
Hmm.
doesn't really matter as much. Now, the things that do matter is performance for your applications. So that's still, latency. You still have to
Of
account for
course,
that.
right.
For example, we had a customer that did a lot of VDI, virtual desktop, and they switched from like a dedicated circuit with a broadband backup to dual broadband circuits to save cost. All of a sudden, their users are complaining about how slow the mouse
Hmm.
moves on the screen because, oh shoot, the latency is higher on broadband circuits than it is on dedicated internet access. So, um, those sorts of things are
Absolutely,
still
right.
very relevant. But from a security perspective, I don't know that much changes. That it wasn't changing already. The local breakout and dynamic hybrid piece being the biggest part, directly accessing those
Hmm. Hmm.
applications and having some way to service chain and be able to do traffic logging at the edge to make sure you see that before you send it off.
Gotcha. That makes sense. So basically, as they say, transport agnostic in that sense, and it seems from what you're saying, even for LTE or
Yeah,
5G,
no,
perhaps when
no,
that's an option.
absolutely. I think the underlay, you still need a good quality underlay. As far as the
Right.
method
Right.
of presentation, the actual service type that's attached to it, whether it be DIA, broadband, MPLS, etc., really becomes less relevant. You still have to design around,
Hmm.
performance profiles for applications, but from a security standpoint, it should all be encrypted anyways across the WAN, site to site. And if you're going up to the cloud, you obviously are making sure that your applications are encrypted at some point, whether it's TLS in the application itself, or perhaps encrypting it as
Hmm.
close as you can to where that application lives. So maybe taking it back to like a Zscaler, and then having that do whatever it needs to from an inspection and policy standpoint before it forwards it to this cloud service you need to get to.
This episode of the WAN Manager podcast is brought to you by TeleGeography's free SD-WAN vendor guide. So if you've searched for an SD-WAN vendor, and I know many of you listening to this have, or will be soon, or should be already, you know that it takes a crazy amount of research, and that is where we come in. So we extracted vendor profiles from our very thorough SD-WAN research service, and we turned them into this handy free guide. We threw in additional insights on SD-WAN trends as well. So it's really a one-stop shop for all things SD-WAN vendor info. You can download the PDF, search the listings, and bone up on your SD-WAN trends. Super easy. All you have to do is click the link in our show notes to get your copy. All right, so I want to get into more specifically the sort of secure edge, zero trust, if you will, or SASE. When if we were talking about SD-WAN, 4 or 5 years ago, maybe even more recently than that, you had to then sort of say, well, what do you mean by that, right? So MEF, as I'm sure you know, and most listeners have been working on kind of defining and certifying SD-WAN. I have a strong guess that they'll get to that. Their next sort of mission will be doing some similar stuff with the SASE stuff. But I'm just wondering if you can give us your sort of working definition and how you might present it to your
I present
customers.
it as essentially a borderless network. Or better
Hmm.
put, like everywhere is the border. It's the line between trusted and untrusted is essentially everywhere. It's on a remote user's endpoint. It's at a branch location that may be sending traffic directly to the internet. It could be in your data center. You have to account for
Hmm.
every point in your network, and that requires, in a zero trust framework, having points of inspection of that traffic at all of those strategic points. So in the case of remote workers, having some sort of agent that inspects the traffic in and out of that host, and potentially immediately
Right.
VPNing it back to some centralized resource that's going to inspect that traffic as it goes. Also, even east-west traffic across a local area network, when you look at the advent
Hmm.
of ransomware, and that getting into networks and is wreaking
Right.
havoc because it would get into a LAN and have, there'd be no segmentation. It can get wherever it wants to. That those days are over. You really are going to have to start segmenting strategically, and figuring out what traffic is really allowed to talk to each other. And I think that, so that means like that really
Hmm.
the lines are going to be as close to the endpoint as you can get them moving forward versus some centralized model like we were talking about before in the data center headquarters like we traditionally had.
So ultimately, does this come down to sort of the really what seems like a real high level of complexity of knowing every device, knowing every user, knowing all of the applications each of those user has? I mean, do WAN and security managers have to sort of manage this, or is some of this able to be done from a sort of
I'm seeing
AI
a lot
software
of
kind of standpoint?
emerging platforms that are very good at fingerprinting and identifying devices. A good example would be Order, Forescout.
Hmm.
Has
Hmm.
some cool products around this, and I know that even some of the SD-WAN vendors are acquiring, solutions to integrate with their products. For example, VMware just bought Nyansa recently, and that does a great job of analyzing and detecting, and like I said, fingerprinting what's on the network and what it's doing and what it should be able to do, and then having
Right.
device and role based controls to say, hey, that is an IoT device. It shouldn't be trying to do what it's trying to do right now. I need to make sure that I lock it down and
Right.
not allow it
Right.
to do to access those applications. So I definitely think that you're going to see this um, merging. Because right now, well, traditionally we've always had a network-based security approach. It's going to have to be much more in depth now. The
Hmm.
network-based security. I think there was a quote recently from the CEO of Zscaler. Network-based security is dead. For the most part,
Hmm.
you're going to have to monitor all endpoints.
Well, again, this was already something someone could have brought up a year ago, let alone after, sort of. I think I saw a McKinsey report recently that said they expect, after all of this is over, still it'll be something like, 4 or 5 times the number of remote workers that had been before. That may be really conservative. It depends on how things shake out. But I would take it from what you're saying then that remote workers are still maybe one of the biggest challenges in putting all this together, on broadband that the WAN manager has no access to or choice over, especially, right? Maybe you have, lack of static IP addresses. Maybe some people are connecting over public Wi-Fi, maybe even BYOD in some cases. Not everyone necessarily got a laptop shipped out to them when all of this happened. Do you think ZTS kind of SASE solutions can deal with all of this
I think so,
decentralization
and I
going
think you're going to
forward?
start to see some hybrid appliances start to make their way into the marketplace too. So where you had
Mm-hmm.
SD-WAN has traditionally been a branch office with a firewall router size device, enterprise grade device that goes at each location. I think you're going to start to see more puck-like mini versions of that. They are going to go into work from home locations.
Hmm.
So, you as a worker can take home this little tiny device that will handle all of that for you. You plug your laptop in to, the port that says LAN on it. You say, you connect up the WAN port to, into that device, or even maybe connected over Wi-Fi. Maybe this
Hmm.
little puck can connect to a Wi-Fi WAN that essentially is just the internet
Right.
access you have in the house. There's actually an interesting product out there from a company called Infiot. It's INFIOT. Their ex Velo Cloud and Cisco product, IoT and work from home. it's actually really great for work from home as well. So they're little,
Gotcha.
they have a little
Mhm.
puck device that you can hook up to the network, and it will, create that SD-WAN overlay with a minimal, less expensive, instead
Mhm.
of talking about, multi-thousand-dollar enterprise grade device, a minimal device
Right.
that
Right.
even is portable. You can throw it in your bag. I think they may even evolve to something like like a little hotspot. Pop it out of your bag, turn it on. It enables Wi-Fi, hops on 4 or 5G, and does all of the WAN and security pieces you need without you really having to do much. So then you don't have to really, for those WAN managers, it becomes a smaller element of what they're used to managing, but really the
Right.
same.
But they have visibility then when they wouldn't have
Right.
had
It's
visibility
Mm.
instead of them
before.
having to
So
go
yeah.
to like the PC help desk team, to figure out, okay, they've got this agent installed on there, and all these users are connecting with this agent back into the firewall. You lose a ton of visibility and control as a WAN manager with that approach. But if you can make it more of like a hardware based appliance,
Right.
just smaller, I think that you're going to see emergence of a ton of those solutions over the course of 2021.
Yeah, and good for vendors too, right? If all of a sudden your endpoints,
Oh,
get
absolutely. They're going to
exponentially
love it.
larger,
I mean, they'll make
right?
less on
So
the hardware because it'll be a smaller box, but those
yeah,
software licenses still apply.
right, right. So speaking of vendors, then I wanted to talk kind of about vendor selection. Again, over the past few years, there's already a big market of SD-WAN vendors. In our SD-WAN product, we profile I think 75 or so. Even still, there's a smaller core that are really appropriate for sort of multinational enterprise customers. But now we're looking at not just assessing or understanding your SD-WAN vendor, but having to understand all of this other service chaining that's going into it, where you're buying bundles of vendors, including this security piece. So who does your SD-WAN provider partner with, and is that the security sort of vendor that you were looking for? Has this been your experience with customers? And if so, how do you sort of help them work through sorting out that additional layer of complexity
Our
in selecting
approach
a vendor?
traditionally has been to take the best of breed vendors for each of their domains. So, for example, SD-WAN, we would say, this platform's
Mhm.
really good at SD-WAN. Let it just manage the WAN and be the traffic cop. If we need to do any of this security inspection, hand that off to something else. The lines are blurring there a little bit. There's a
Mhm.
lot of
Mhm.
vendors that are starting to tie that in. So
Right.
if the customer does not have, say, a next generation security solution, and they're interested in it, we are certainly are able to bring those to bear now, because they're integrated with those SD-WAN solutions, and vice versa. The security vendors are now adding SD-WAN capabilities to their products, and starting to drive into those markets. So it really just depends on incumbent vendors and their solutions. I mean, man, there's a lot of the SD-WAN features the playing field is pretty level anymore. A lot of the base
Mhm.
functionality is kind of table stakes these days on just about every platform. So, I mean, I hate to say it, but it's another one of
Right.
those. It
Right.
depends on who's managing things and their
Yeah.
current needs. But we do work with a number of clients that need some sort of security refresh along with the WAN refresh. When we start to ask them questions about, well, do you guys
Right.
do this on the security side? Do you do this? And they start to ask, well, no, should we? Should we be looking at that? Maybe we're not doing everything we should.
Right. Right.
And then we can offer them some either some integrated options that might exist on the platform, or else tie another best of breed solution together. Really popular integration for us is a speaking of vendors, is like a
Mhm.
VMware Bellow Cloud. integration with, say, Zscaler or Palo Alto Prisma, and tying those solutions together, best of breed security with best of breed SD-WAN.
Right, right. So when someone approaches you, of course, they have a budget and they have specific orders from the CIO or whatever the case may be. But if they're open, would you suggest they kind of rethink, the whole stack together rather than just work
I
on one piece
definitely
at a
think
time in
so.
that
I mean,
sense?
it all depends on how standoffish the security team is. There's some that have a stack that they've built, and
Hmm.
it's so tightly integrated, they just don't want to touch it. They'll say, that
Right, right,
larger organizations that are very siloed, the security team will say, hands off, you deal with your part, and um, we'll deal with ours. The good news is, I
right.
think the walls are coming down in a lot of organizations. That whole DevOps
Mhm.
mentality is
Yeah.
making its way into enterprise, and teams are realizing for the best possible outcome, we have to like, kind of cross those silos and work together on this stuff. So that's been refreshing. A refreshing change that we've seen is that
Hmm.
there definitely is a changing perception in enterprise when it comes to domains of expertise and responsibility, and a little bit more open
Right.
mindedness than there was in the past.
I interview a lot of WAN managers, talk to a lot of them at conferences, that sort of thing, and it's surprising how often, whatever the topic, although certainly security has been a big one here, that their answer comes down to not the lack of a technical solution that's available or the ability to find that vendor or whatever, but the political
Yes,
situation from within their organization. Whether it's security integration or maybe there was M&A activity and there was another network team with their set of vendors that now have to merge and all that. So I think just like anybody else's job, the WAN manager's job is to be a diplomat as much
I very
as
much
an
agree. And
engineer
I
in some
think you'll
cases,
start
right?
to see, we've kind of had the phase one and phase two SD-WAN solutions. Just like you have multi-cloud out there, you're going to have multi-WAN. You're going to have somebody who either by acquisition or change their horse midway, have
Right.
multiple WAN solutions and have to manage those. There's going to have to
Mhm.
be, tools and
Yeah, yeah.
integrations for doing so. Hopefully those open APIs really allow for that, and enable some of those capabilities.
Right.
But yeah, you're right. Um, Man, the political landscape and forces outside your control, the business itself and what it needs, sometimes drives those decisions, and WAN managers don't have a choice.
Yeah, and on multi-WAN, I like that term. Sometimes that's even by choice if there's a sort of regional provider that's really best in breed, and you end up creating a sort of regional WAN, if you will, and then connecting that to other regional WANs rather than thinking of it pure. The MPLS world lended itself very much to thinking of your entire network, regardless of its geographic scope, as one thing. But I think SD-WAN really frees people up to consider it in
Yeah,
a lot of
for
different
sure.
ways like that. So yeah. So just last thing on vendors, just again thinking through your experience with your customers, what are the sort of, we've talked a lot about this in the SD-WAN world, but I'm interested in getting to security instead of what are the key factors that you'd want to look for, or that you would be considering rather in choosing a security vendor. Is it just like the posture of the security, sort of like going from like cloud based, like Zscaler I mentioned before, your degree of management, your degree of control as a WAN or security manager, or, other factors? What do you sort of recommend to your customers there?
It's typically evaluating, incumbent vendors, what's in place today.
That's a great point. Yeah, where are you right now? That's always the starting point. Yeah,
Right. And sometimes customer has, a great vendor, just not the right platforms for moving forward. So they say they
right.
have a bunch of prem-based firewalls, and they're migrating to the cloud, and the network team is, reluctant to make changes because this is the way we've always done it. They don't know there's all these great cloud-based security options under the incumbent vendor you're working with that integrates wonderfully. Like I mentioned to Prisma before. If you're a Palo Alto customer, their cloud-based options in Prisma are pretty awesome. And it's really easy to integrate and tie into what their tools called Panorama that manages the whole Palo Alto
Right.
infrastructure. You can just tie it right in to the rest. So you manage and maintain that same security posture and policy that you've already built. You have spent maybe the last decade building up. Just have it applied to all of your cloud-based access as well. So I think that's a big factor is where you're at today, and can we improve upon what you already have. But if not, it's really getting down to the business requirements. Where are you going over the next few years? You mentioned mergers and acquisitions. What kind of changes are you making there?
Mhm.
How fast do you need to add locations? And does your means of sending out a device and getting it turned up, is it going to meet your requirements as far as how fast you need to grow? Also, just your cloud initiatives. What are you doing in the
Right.
cloud? And man, there's so many times
Hmm.
where
Hmm.
application developers are deploying a cloud app and everyone forgot to talk to the network and security team about how that gets tied in. So, you know, age
Of
old
course.
tale since
Yeah.
the public cloud came to
Absolutely.
be.
Yeah.
It's still happening though, happens all the time. We get brought in a lot of cases,
Hmm.
and our guys are getting pretty good at doing Azure and AWS and GCP integrations because it's unfortunately typically getting thrown into a firefight. Hey, we already moved this thing and it doesn't work very well. So can you help us? Or
Right.
security team
Mhm.
just realized that they moved that thing and wait, we can't see everything like we're supposed to. So, it comes down to the changes as the business evolves and moves applications around. Finding something dynamic. So finding a dynamic security platform that can kind of grow and
Right.
change with them. That's a lot of times what we focus on.
Yeah, for that matter, in thinking through sort of all the multi-cloud and where applications sit and where development sits, there's going to be some organizations that are never going to move all of their sort of applications off premises too, right? So you might have to include some amount of on-premise data in there forever, even if you're moving to cloud for
Yeah,
everything else in the
agree, and
organization
that's why
too.
a lot of those platforms that tie those pieces together. I think that there's some good, I would say legacy security vendors out there that are doing a great job of handling that and enabling
Hmm. Hmm.
secure access in your cloud instance by turning up a virtual appliance from say an AWS or Azure marketplace to be able to just manage it the way you always have. I do find that a lot of the
Right.
native cloud tools are lacking from an enterprise perspective. They don't have all of those security bells and whistles that a lot of enterprise security solutions have. So as those get mature, there is that option for you to deploy a virtual version, a virtual edition of a firewall appliance, even SD-WAN appliances. You can deploy as virtual appliances in those
Right.
cases too.
Excellent. Well, any parting thoughts for us on this general topic, or I mean, you've already said
I
a
don't
lot there.
think
So
so. I mean, it's rapidly changing, and like we talked about, they are converging the SD-WAN and security space. So keep an eye on. I think 2021 is actually going to be a pretty big year for a lot of vendors to tie these two pieces together, which will draw WAN managers and
right.
security folks even tighter. I think that there's no choice.
Hmm.
Whether they
Right.
like it or not,
Whether they like it or not,
SASE is
right?
here to
Yeah.
stay. It's
Yeah.
it's how we're going to
Yeah.
connect. Just because
Yeah.
um, the applications and users are so distributed now, and it's really the only way.
Right.
Yeah, it's only
Only
yeah
more so.
it's only going to become more and more distributed. So everyone's going to have to get used to
Yeah.
it.
Excellent. And with that, we'll wrap it up. So I always like to ask a question at the end, sort of around what you most miss about the pre-COVID life, and what you're most excited to now that it on the horizon. It looks like we may be maybe it may take several months, but it looks like we're heading back to normalcy. So, what is it what first? I guess what's the last show you went to, and any particular that you're looking forward to?
I went to a show called Frankly MSP Live this year, early this
Don't
year.
know that one. I have to look for it. Yeah.
The company is called Avic
Hmm.
Networks. They're based they're in Canada. I'm trying to think of where they're at. I can't think of specifically where they are. Maybe Vancouver area. But
Hmm.
anyways, Auvik Networks, AUVIK, fantastic company. What they make is monitoring monitoring platform as a service, and
Gotcha.
we use it a lot for our customers for monitoring. Very very sharp product, easy to use, great for MSPs. Went to their event in Santa Barbara, California earlier this year. It's called Frankly MSP Live. Really, really great for MSPs. Made a lot of great connections there. Learned a lot of things. They did a great job of not really pushing their product too much. Just really had a lot of services and talks to enable MSPs, which I thought was pretty awesome. So highly recommend that show. But I think what I miss more than anything is the spontaneous connections I make at those events, traveling and meeting people, getting new perspectives and
Mhm.
ideas. I mean, there's only so much that you can digest from an internet browser and watching videos and connecting with people over
Yeah.
Zoom. You just there's so many nuances and intangible things that you don't that you're missing by not being there in person. So and it's
Yeah.
those connections you didn't expect to have. I always go to an event with a plan. Here's the people I'm going to meet. Here's what I want to get out of this conference, and it's
Right.
always the most insightful stuff that comes out of it had nothing to do with what I went out there for. So I think that's what I miss
Right.
most is
Absolutely.
those insights. It just seems like everything's so controlled and scripted without that spontaneity. So I will. I'm looking forward to it. Back up and running and make those connections and we got to get together at one of these and have a beer and
Yeah.
talk about music one of these times.
Yeah, I was gonna say. So we learned in the sort of lead up to this that we're both from the same kind of independent music scene. So that's my final question then. What was the last band that you got to see
Oh
before all of
man,
this
good
went down?
question. Oh man, I'm unprepared. Oh, I know who it was.
I don't know. I don't know if you have kids. It's hard for me to get out to a show, but I did. I saw one in January that I was like, oh, I'm so glad
So
I went to that
I
show.
fortunately
Right?
I have
So, yeah.
teenagers and my
Yeah.
kids are into the same music that I am. So we
Okay.
take them to the shows with us now,
Nice.
and we all
Excellent.
went together to go. I think the last show we saw together was Andrew Bird.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Did he whistle? Yeah.
He did a lots of
He
whistling.
is he's amazing. Multi instrument virtuosity is something pretty rare out there. So yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. So I'm looking forward to getting back to live music as well. I certainly have missed that.
Yeah, and I am looking forward to catching up with you on all of our crossover in the scenes that we came up in there. So awesome. Appreciate you taking the time during this time of year, and we'll let you know when it comes out.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Greg. It was really fun.
Thanks very much for listening. The WAN Manager podcast is brought to you by TeleGeography, a division of Primetrica Incorporated, and is edited and produced by Jane Miller. I wrote the theme song you're listening to right now, and we get administrative canine support from my dog Honeybun, who you might hear chiming in from time to time when the mood strikes her. If you want to learn more about our data, head over to telegeography.com, where you can find our blog that covers many of the topics we hit here, and you can sign up for our WAN Manager newsletter. Until next time, have a great day.